WalrusCast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WalrusCast. I'm your host, Jonathan Knoll.
And I'm your guest, Dustin Wimberly.
And we're here to talk about Harry Potter. Well, let me start over. WalrusCast is kind of a soapbox for myself to basically tell people what I think about different things. I also intend to go on and do commentaries for different movies that I really like. And that's, I guess, all you really need to know so far. Now, Dustin and I have known each other for almost a year now. Very close friends.
I would say so.
And, yeah. So let's get down to it.
Let's start, boys and girls.
So today's episode is Harry Potter and the Pitfalls of Story and Medium. And let me start by saying I do not hate Harry Potter.
Nor do I.
No, in fact, this fool really likes it. No, I grew up with Harry Potter, as did he. And, well, it was first grade I actually dressed up as Harry Potter.
I went as Dumbledore in third grade. It was pretty nice.
And,
although I kept tripping over my beard.
Yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I've also read all the books and seen all the movies, of course.
As have I.
And, Dustin here disagrees with me on some points.
Let's do this right now. Let's do it.
Alright, let's start with the characters then. Harry Potter himself. The boy who lived. The boy who is prophesied to bring down evil.
That's a pretty big build-up, John.
Yeah.
You know, really, most people, let's be honest here, Harry Potter is nobody's favorite character.
No.
Nobody says, when you're asked, who's your favorite character in Harry Potter? No one says, Harry Potter. No.
Well, I used to like Harry Potter the best, but, you know, I grew up. No, Harry Potter is kind of one of those characters who, by the end of the book, really can do no wrong. I mean, even at his worst, like, what would you say is his worst point?
His worst point? I would say that even though, and I can understand seeing as his parents, you know, were killed by Voldemort and that he never really knew them and that he lived with these horrible people, he always seemed to have this kind of like chip on his shoulder towards other people, and which is sort of understandable, but like over the years after he experienced love from the Weasleys, you know, kind of adopting him almost, and from his friends, teachers, what have you, it never really went away. He always had this like kind of bitter attitude.
Oh yeah, and really I think that's a big part of the fact that we experience him as he's maturing, as he lives through his teenage years. He's full of angst. Any teenager is. I'm sure you were.
I was, definitely.
I certainly was. So I can't really fault him for that, but there are points where he is just hard to root for.
Name a few, John.
Let's
discuss.
Okay. How about his treatment of Ron in Deathly Hallows?
Well, they were both under the influence of the Horcrux, you have to remember.
Well, yeah, but even before that, he's just... I think by this point, Harry's realized he's not going to get the girl being Hermione, which is fine. I don't think that was ever his endgame anyway. But at the same time, he's just... Oh, Ron knows everything. Clearly I'm so stressed that I have to push all of my friends away. And there is a point for that. Absolutely. But at the same time, he's just... I don't know. I don't hate Harry Potter himself.
I can see why Harry Potter felt the way he did in the Deathly Hallows towards Ron and well, not so much Hermione, more so towards Ron. I think it was, you know, he's trying to He's basically been given a mission by Dumbledore to destroy all these Horcruxes and to kill Voldemort, with basically no instruction as to how to do that, how to locate them, how to destroy them. So there's a lot of stress on his head, like you said.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the other big problems I have with the books themselves, is because it takes so long for the actual story to take place. I mean, seriously, the first 3 books, it's just one of those, "Hi, I'm Voldemort. You're not Voldemort for much longer. 'Cause I'm the boy who lived." But then 4 comes around, Voldemort's back, and suddenly it's one of those, "I am angry." So really, it takes 3 books to build up to that. Why not just nix the first 3 and move on from there?
But you gotta like the story. I mean, it's all about the story here. I mean, you know, in the first 3 books, it's not like there's just a bunch of filler and then there's Voldemort being spooky and scary and not quite Voldemort.
Well, yeah, I agree with you there, but it's just one of those. That's a lot of exposition to get through.
Fair point.
It's a lot of world building that, if it weren't there, it could very easily be edited out.
But it helps us to get to know the characters very well. I mean, by the time the 4th book rolls around, we know who Harry is, we know who Hermione is, we know who Ron is, we know who, you know, Dumbledore, Minerva McGonagall, all the big characters. We know who they are and what they're about.
This is true. Again, though, it's just kind of writing 101. If you don't have to say it, don't worry about it.
Fair point.
I have here Hermione as a character that I'd like to talk about. Hermione kind of embodies the brain. I mean, that's one thing that I always thought was very interesting about the characters. They're very similar to a lot of other trio-based stories, such as Attack on Titan, where it seems like they're almost symbolic of the heart, brain, and brawn.
They're very archetypal.
Exactly. I mean, Harry Potter, let's face it, Harry Potter is Joseph Campbell's wet dream. Not like that, you pervs.
No, I think you did mean it that way. No, but seriously.
No, but I'm quite serious. Hermione definitely represents the brain. Harry is clearly the heart. So
right. And then
that make Ron the brawn?
Well, he's not really packing much upstairs. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Ron's a good guy, but he's not the he's not the sharpest tool in the shed.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of all I really had to say about Hermione, is that she's very archetypal.
Can I go on a tangent about Hermione for a moment?
Be my guest.
I think Hermione was ill-sorted. I mean, I understand why J.K. Rowling put Hermione in Gryffindor, so that, you know, you have the 3 Gryffindors. So they're all in the same house, you know, a uniformity, a unity. But Hermione is brave, and she does show the key characteristics of what it takes to be a Gryffindor, but I think more so her dominant characteristics are very Ravenclaw.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it was illogical for J.K. Rowling to put Hermione into Gryffindor. I think she should have been in Ravenclaw. But, I mean, even if she was in Ravenclaw, it's not like, you know, they would have hated, like, Harry and Hermione and Ron couldn't have been still friends.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I see what you mean there.
Yeah. I feel like she was ill-sorted, and I feel like it was for an unnecessary purpose.
I think it was more to serve the story.
Yeah, exactly. Unnecessarily.
Alright, here's the big one that we disagree on.
Here's the controversy, folks.
Dumbledore.
Snape. Severus Snape.
Dumbledore!
Now let's talk.
Yes, Dumbledore is one of the characters that I have one of the biggest problems with. Because, again, these characters are so archetypal and they're relatively easy to predict because they're so archetypal. But I think the bigger problem is that when characters are so archetypal, like they are in Harry Potter, they either become caricatures or they become omnipotent. And with Dumbledore, he's very, very omnipotent.
I think now we'll discuss later how the books differ from the movies in portraying Dumbledore, obviously.
Right.
But I think Dumbledore's omnipotence is actually, it serves very well, because say if Harry Potter were, this paragon of virtue, it would be extraordinarily boring, because, you can't have your main character be perfect. It's just, you won't have a good story if you do. So I think since Dumbledore, if we're going to go with Joseph Campbell's perfect, mythological, archetypes, he's the mentor, the wise old man, the wizard.
Yeah, he's also, funny enough, the person who sets the quest.
Right. And I think Dumbledore being this paragon of virtue and this almost omnipotent character in the books, he's not really portrayed that way in the movies, but in the books...
Well, in the first two, at least.
It's in the first two.
Anyway,
he being the fact that he's more of an advisor and more of a mentor, his omnipotence really isn't an issue to the story.
But then once the story really gets underway with book 4, he's much more active in the story, which is part of the reason why he's just not that good of a character, in my opinion. Yeah, he's important and all that. He's advisory, and he sets the quest, like I said. It's a complete character 180, which I think does not serve the story well.
I feel like, in book 6, for example, it's very pivotal to the plot that Dumbledore is active, that he takes action. I feel like it could have been avoided up until book 6. I don't feel like it was completely...
It wasn't completely necessary.
It wasn't completely, it wasn't completely necessary. And I feel like that you wouldn't have as big of a beef with Dumbledore being active if it would have waited until the 6th book. And I feel like it would have... I actually agree with you that it would have... I think it would have worked better for the story had he been more advisory and passive until the 6th book, where he has to take action because he leads Harry on to destroy to get the locket.
Yeah. Also, in the first in book 5, he is such an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, we have for this character survey, Voldemort. Voldemort. The mass murderer that just is so fabulous.
One of the worst literary villains ever.
He is! Oh my god, he is!
At least we can agree on this one, John.
This is true,
we can agree on this one.
I mean, the first thing he does, whenever he has Harry where he wants him, he tells Harry his whole plan.
Yeah.
Honestly...
let's go to the graveyard scene in the Goblet of Fire.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the potion's completed. Voldemort rises from the cauldron, and he has come back to full power. And then there's Harry, who's chained up to Tom Riddle's grave.
Right.
And
Tom Riddle Sr.
Tom Riddle Sr.'s grave. Thank you. And then he summons all of his Death Eaters, basically to put on, a little pageant for himself.
Exactly.
It's like, ooh, I've caught Harry Potter, the boy who lived. Look how evil I am,
And now, a little song and dance. Tra-la-la! Tra-la-la!
Really, any real evil mastermind would have seen his villain, or his nemesis chained up. He could have just taken out his wand and killed him. Like that.
End of story.
End of story. It would have been... so much easier. Now, I feel like Voldemort wouldn't have been as bad of a villain if J.K. Rowling wouldn't have given him those little monologues. She would have given Harry ways to to kind of interact, I guess, with the because it's basically Voldemort whenever he has Harry in his clutches giving this big soliloquy or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think that a big thing that is the problem though is that this is kind of a medium problem, which we'll get to in a minute. But usually when these kind of things happen, when you're reading it, it's no big deal because, they're explaining things to me in writing.
Right.
Great. But the reason why Voldemort doesn't hold up in the movies when he has these big, long soliloquies is because nothing's happening.
For those of you out there who've seen the Austin Powers movies, it's very reminiscent of Dr. Evil doing his, like, you know, thing in front of Austin Powers.
$1 million.
Right, exactly. So I feel like Voldemort in the books was a better villain than portrayed in the movies.
Yeah.
Because on film, he becomes very almost Dr. Evil-esque, where he becomes almost like this comical villain.
Exactly. I mean, there are just so many scenes of Voldemort where he's yelling, "Ah!" and I'm just like, you're sad. You're really, really sad. I mean, Deathly Hallows Part 2, when he's finally putting an end to the big force field at the end, which, oh my god. It looks pretty, but why? Why is that?
Can I say something also about Deathly Hallows Part 2 since you brought it up? I thought it was very anticlimactic the way it showed him dying.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, they're fighting, they're doing their wand thing, and then out of nowhere, he just turns into dust. And that's just, it's not the way it was portrayed in the book, and it was just very, like, anticlimactic, because you're expecting this big, like, you know, bang. Not a literal bang, mind you, but this climax.
We're expecting the beast to change into a human again, is what we're looking for.
Right, and it doesn't happen.
Right.
It just, poof, he becomes ash. Exactly.
But Voldemort, on the other hand, does... He also has actual... He actually does have real-world resonance. Sorry, folks, we're gonna Godwin here.
Yay!
He is very much like Hitler.
He is. He's trying to create a pure elitist society of purebloods.
Yes.
What was Adolf Hitler trying to do, ladies and gentlemen? He was trying to create a perfect race. Also,
Hitler was very much a statesman. He made speeches. Who else makes speeches?
Voldemort! No, not to say, ladies and gentlemen, that anyone who makes a speech is, you know, tantamount to being Adolf Hitler, because then that would just be silly.
No, but in this case, it's just one of those... We've seen so many Hitlers, we've experienced so many Hitlers in real life, that the piss is gone.
I feel like... I like how the Death Eaters are compared to the Nazis and, you know, Voldemort being compared to Hitler, but I feel like she could have, like, approached maybe, like, a different, like, you know, real world villain. Because, like, if we look at the Star Wars, I'm gonna go on a tangent real quick.
Whatever, man.
If we looked at the Star Wars franchise and we look at the Empire is very much like Nazi Germany. I mean, let's face it, because you have this totalitarian state, and I mean, the Empire is based. George Lucas said it himself. The Empire is based off of both the Roman Empire, but it's also militarily speaking very much based off of Nazi Germany, because the Empire has this very humanocentric policy, and it carries out mass acts of genocide.
I think actually a better comparison, funny enough, is actually Soviet Russia, because we have all the pogroms, we have all of the hardships, and the fact that we have this strong totalitarianism, very reminiscent.
That's a very good comparison. I wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah. Honestly, Empire is far more Soviet Russia. Also, let's bring it back to Clerks. You remember seeing Clerks with the Return of the Jedi versus Empire thing?
Yeah.
And how at the end there's so much bigger of a body count because of all the independent contractors that had to be brought in.
Right.
It's very similar, because you have a society where work is needed. Suddenly you have a large support network of... Well, support network. That's the wrong word. Suddenly you have a strong government, and it's very attractive to have a government contract, because you get paid more. So it's kind of one of those very more similar to Soviet Russia than Nazi Germany.
Well, let's get back to Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
This generation's big franchise.
Right. Do you want to get to the hot button issue?
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the hot button issue.
You introduce this one.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about Michael Gambon as Dumbledore. And I personally do not like him as Dumbledore.
I like him as Dumbledore.
For some of the reasons we aforementioned in our discussion about the character of Dumbledore.
Yeah.
So
he's semi-omnipotent. Also, just a character thing, he was fridged. You know what being fridged means, right?
I don't know the term.
Okay, to be fridged is to be killed off in a way that is to make emotion happen from our hero.
Okay, gotcha.
Usually it's a feminism term because comic books are a very interesting medium.
Yes.
And one of the big stories for the Green Lantern Kyle Rayner is that at one point his girlfriend was killed and stuffed in a refrigerator.
Okay, I get
to elicit emotion.
Okay, now I get where you're going. Okay.
So yeah, Dumbledore totally fridged.
Yeah.
It was a killing to make Harry angry, and everybody else angry.
Right.
But no, about Michael Gambon.
Why don't you discuss why you like him, and I'll discuss why I don't like him, and then we'll have a little friendly debate.
Okay. The reason I like Michael Gambon is because he is human. At the very core of his character, he's human, which is one of the biggest challenges of Dumbledore himself. Because Dumbledore himself is, as mentioned before, semi-omnipotent, meaning he can do anything. And the fact that he's always there going, yes, Harry, about this thing, and not really doing anything about that thing, kind of paints him to be a little more dickish than usual. Additionally, with Order of the Phoenix, he eliminates himself from the situation entirely until the very end. A very human thing to do, which I think was best portrayed by Michael Gambon, and because of the way that the other Dumbledore... Hang on.
Richard Harrison.
Richard Harrison, thank you.
You're welcome. I know my Dumbledore's boy.
Thank you. The way that Richard Harrison portrayed Dumbledore was as a wise old man, which is important. But at... Huh?
Is it Harris or Harrison? It's one of those two. Carry on.
Look it up. But Richard Harris's Dumbledore is just that, a wise old man. He doesn't...
Go on.
He just...
And it's Richard Harris, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. He doesn't move the plot along, which a good mentor should do. He comes in, he says a few words at the beginning of the year, the adventure happens, and then he stops. And he stops the whole production and just says, all right, here's what happened. He's more... Because he's a wise old man, he's more prone to exposition. Michael Gambon, however, took the character in a slightly different mode, which is portray him as a human, which, in this case, he's very active throughout the story. He takes more interest, and he portrays the character as a human. One of the biggest problems that people have with Michael Gambon as Dumbledore is that in the scene where he finds out that Harry Potter has been chosen by the Goblet of Fire, he goes in and is just like, Harry Potter!
Did you put your name into the Goblet of Fire? That I would say that's the crown point of why people don't like him. That's the example, the go-to example of why.
Yeah, but at the same time, yelling like that, because suddenly it's a very life or death struggle here. Harry Potter, as McGonagall said, is a boy, not a piece of meat. And Dumbledore does, believe it or not, care about Harry. So to have him yell like that, even if it's in the out of concern, shows him as far more of a human than, Harry, tell me the truth. Did you put your name to the Goblet of Fire? Because this is his first time experiencing this. Now you tell me why you don't like him.
I'll tell you why I don't like him. Okay, I don't like Michael Gambon as Dumbledore primarily because of the reasons John do. I'm not too fond of Dumbledore being this active character. I mean, like, the activity is necessary, like, say, in the 6th book. It's absolutely necessary. But I don't think Michael Gambon really adheres to the archetype of the mentor. And I'm I'm very much a stickler for mythological archetypes. And,
which is why you're perfect to talk to about this.
Well, thank you. I'm not too fond of Michael Gambon's interpretation of Dumbledore because he takes it away from the wise old mentor figure that Joseph Campbell, wrote about, portrayed, created. It's not really a creation, but
it's more of an observance,
right? That he observed that happens in literature, and I don't like Michael Gambon because he does do that whole "Harry, did you put your neighbor into the goblet of fire?" And I think it's not just because of that specific scene, but there's also a lot of example of that kind of a thing happening throughout the series with Michael Gambon. Like, he gets very, like, aggressive, almost. He's a very aggressive Dumbledore, but Dumbledore in the books is very calm. He's very calm. He's very reserved. He's kind of like, I almost equate him to like an island, because he is like this island of calmness in this midst of chaos.
Yeah, he's the tranquil point.
He's the tranquil point.
Yeah, he's the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And I think, considering that he's not the main character or one of the main characters, and he just serves as the mentor in the books, that he should be more passive and more, saintly, more paragon-like, more omnipotent. That it serves him well in that advisor role. Now, if he were in the active role that he is in the movies, more so anyway, no, the omnipotence doesn't work, because it's very, it's boring.
Exactly.
So from your perspective, I would agree with you that Michael Gambon should, since there's more activity of Dumbledore in the movies, it would work better for him to be more flawed. But that's not the way he should be portrayed, in my opinion. He should be portrayed in the movies the way he is in the books.
Okay. So, jointly, what do we both agree about on Dumbledore?
Sure. That he serves as a good advisor to Harry.
He certainly does. Not always, but
No.
he's certainly a good advisor. He sets the quest.
Right.
He's an almost perfect paragon of humanity.
I think he does. I think a good thing about Dumbledore too is not just the purpose he serves in the books, but the purpose he can serve for us. I'm gonna get a little philosophical here, ladies and gentlemen.
Go for it.
But Dumbledore, I think, is a very good role model for all of us, not just for Harry and his friends, because it shows that there is love in humanity. It shows that, you should, strive to love, that loving is the most important thing. As I think it was Dumbledore who said it, that love is the most powerful form of magic. Something along those lines, I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
But
we don't currently have the books and movies out.
No.
So we can...
We're just doing this from our memories, ladies and gentlemen. But, so I think we can both agree Dumbledore serves as a very good role model for all of us as well, not just for the characters in the book. Another thing that I think you and I can agree about Dumbledore is that he's very he does the mentor role well.
Yes.
He's not like a weird. He fulfills the mentor role as well as Joseph Campbell could have probably wanted it. So,
yeah. I think I can liken him best to Obi-Wan in New Hope.
Yes.
He goes in, he sets the quest, but at the same time, Obi-Wan is very active.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and in the end, he dies.
I've noted a lot of modern fiction, relatively modern. I'm speaking in the last 100 years.
Right.
Relatively modern fiction, whether it be cinema or literature, the mentor role has shifted, I think, to a more active role. Like, you can look at Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings and in The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not extraordinarily hands-on, because he disappears from time to time to let the hero do as he sees fit, whether it be Bilbo or Frodo. But, well, not as he sees fit, but leaves him alone.
Right.
But he's also very active in the Lord of the Rings, and he's there,
He's moving the plot along.
Right, he's moving the plot along. But anyway.
All right. Favorite movie?
I think we both agree on this one. The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Prisoner of Azkaban, hands down. It's really the first time in the movie series that we actually get to see the characters as human. I know this is one of my biggest problems with the Harry Potter series in general. They're not exactly human.
No, they're not. I mean, in the first couple of movies, no offense to Christopher Columbus. It's Christopher Columbus. I thought so. But I said it, and it sounded like I was talking about the Explorer. We're not talking about the Explorer.
We're talking about the director of Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone.
As it should be. That's a different point anyway.
Well, excuse me, princess.
That is the title, and it was given by J.K. Rowling. That's the way it should. I'm a purist if you guys haven't figured this out yet.
Anyway, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets.
Thank you.
Right. But this is the first time that, first of all, the directors change. And this is the first time that we see Michael Gambon. It's also the first time where we get to see Harry, Ron, and Hermione be themselves, not, we're going on an adventure, Charlie.
They're very, I agree with you on all those points except the Michael Gambon point. But, anyway, may Richard Harris rest in peace. But
yeah, may he rest in peace. Again, I don't hate the guy. I really don't. I don't hate these things.
Sure you don't, John. Anyway, you brought this point up, so I mean, you, in all fairness, you should probably say it, but John and I were talking before we did this podcast, and he made a very good point, is that the way, who's the director of Prisoner of Azkaban? What's his name?
Oh, God, I forgot to look that up. Sorry, folks.
But anyway, he does a very good job of making the school more like an actual school. Like a very good point that you made, John, was that, like the uniforms. If you look at it in the first and the second movies, the uniforms are very straight-laced, it's very Catholic school-y,
The director is Alfonso Cuarón or something like that.
Alfonso Cuarón. Are you sure?
Yeah, Cuarón.
Oh, I'll be buggered. But not here. Anyway, look that up, by the way, guys, if you don't know what buggered means.
And then wash out your brains.
Yes. Anyway, but basically, in Prisoner of Azkaban, you see, they're rolling up their sleeves, or they have their robes thrown over their back, or they have their shirts untucked. Like their
ties are undone.
It's very realistic because I've seen private schools. I don't know any private school where all the kids are always straight-laced all the time.
The movie is also really good at showing them acting the way they would in a dorm situation like that. Like, right at the very beginning with the jelly bean contest and the weird things that they do, that's very
dorm-like.
Yeah. Because you have to do something in order to stay, sane.
Right. And I think, bollocks, what was the point I was going to make? You talk, John. I need to remember my thought.
I think another thing that Prisoner of Azkaban has over the others is that it's not about Voldemort.
No, that's what I was actually. That was the point I was going to say. It focuses on the struggle between Harry and Sirius,
and it's more about Harry's identity more than anything else, because suddenly he has a very straight-laced view of the world.
Right.
Everything's either you're good or you're bad, and now suddenly ambiguity is introduced.
Yes.
Because suddenly you have a character who is wrongfully imprisoned and has done horrible things in the name of justice and goodness.
Right.
But in the form of Sirius Black. But at the same time, his world is changing. He's very much a teenager. He's 13 years old now.
Right.
And
I think we start to see that, the fact that they're becoming angsty teenagers in The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, yeah.
Their hormones are starting to set in, if you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. We also get the wonderful Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid in his professorial debut,
yes.
Which is just fantastic.
I love Hagrid as a teacher. Like, I think he is like, Like, he's not, like, academic. Like, you wouldn't, like, reading the Philosopher's Stone or the Chamber of Secrets, you wouldn't expect Hagrid to become a teacher. But
Absolutely not.
I mean, he didn't even graduate from Hogwarts. He was expelled, you know, in the middle of his Hogwarts education. So, but he becomes the
magical creatures.
Yeah,
professor.
Yeah, I'll think.
Yeah,
go on. It's not important. You know what we're talking about.
Yeah, but
care for magical creatures. That's
yeah,
what it is.
yeah,
that's the class.
Care and feeding of magical creatures.
Yes,
and he just exudes such joy in that role too, far more than he ever was as keeper of
keys and grounds at Hogwarts.
Yeah, of course you know all about Hogwarts.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what? But yeah, it's just a good time, and it's also the last time we have John Williams doing his magic.
Hail John Williams.
John Williams is the man. But yeah, and I guess that brings us to the last thing about tonight that I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
Why is it that people assume that the book is always better than the movie?
That's a good question, and I'm very guilty of making this assumption myself. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that in most instances, the books have much more detail in them than the movies, and I think a lot of I don't think that would be inherently a bad thing, but I think in a lot of the movies, they'll add things that don't make sense unless you have that backup detail. Like, for example, in the Harry Potter movies, Percy just up and disappears. Like, no one knows what happened to Percy, and then he magically reappears in the last movie. Like, it's like, well, where was Percy this whole time? And it explains it thoroughly in the books that he had a tension with the Weasleys because of his position in the Ministry and because of the way he viewed the Ministry and whatnot, and that was very opposed to the Weasleys. So there was this tension that wasn't really discussed or talked about in the movies.
But at the same time, I think you could take out his entire story, and the story would go fine.
Oh, of course. It's just that I think the insult to the readers of Harry Potter is that you introduce Percy and then you just take him away and then you just plop him back down, 5 movies later.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's just, it's a little aggravating. Like, that's just an example.
Right.
But sometimes I think the movies do good in their own right. Like, let's take a look at a recent film adaptation of a book, The Hobbit.
Okay.
The Hobbit introduces...
Actually, let's not do The Hobbit.
Let's not do The Hobbit?
Because that's also kind of a hot-button issue with a lot of people.
Okay.
Apparently, there are a lot of people that just didn't like Battle of Five Armies.
Oh, okay. I like Battle of Five Armies.
And I think it has a lot to do with the same reasons why I don't actually like Deathly Hallows Part 2.
There we go.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah. But, what do you think? Why do you think people often say the books are better than the movies?
Well, I think the reason why is because people who read the books and become really rabid fans of the books are expecting little insignificant details a lot of the time.
Right.
Like Percy.
Really? And
there's no point in the movies where you can suddenly say, oh, hey, by the way, this character over here is doing a thing. We're not even going to show the character, but he's doing a thing. It'll be important later. And I think that's really to the detriment of the story itself.
Right.
My bigger concern, though, is that it's a whole different medium. Well, this is the reason why movies are not as bad as people think. Movies are, on average, roughly 2 hours long, give or take.
Right.
A book can be as long as you want. You can put as many details. You could say that you could tell a story about the day that Harry Potter was on the toilet and he read all of the Daily Prophet.
Right.
And you could have that in the story, and the story would go on. In a movie, that would be an insignificant detail, which you could just easily take out.
Right.
And in the end, movies are a visual experience. That's why Voldemort just doesn't work. Is because he soliloquizes, and because he puts so much effort into making everything seem so much more dramatic. But in a visual standpoint, it's just kind of silly.
Yeah. I think another thing, and you basically just touched on it, but I think another thing about, you said they're different mediums, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're reading a book, you're imagining what's going on in your brain. You're painting the picture in your brain, but with a movie, that's already done for you, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the reasons people are like, well, the book was better, is because, and I'm guilty of this, like I said. I'm guilty of doing this a lot.
I'm guilty of it, too.
Is that we paint a picture in our brains and we expect the movie to match the picture.
Right.
When in reality, it really can't, because, it's not like the director can go into our brains and be like, let's see what's in here.
That's the biggest problem that people have with the Hunger Games series. Everybody rages about how Katniss was supposed to be injured with this big explosion. I haven't actually read the book. Sorry about this, but...
Neither have I.
But... And how she was forced into hardships because she was cold and starving and all of that. You can't do that with actors. It's dangerous.
Right.
Really dangerous. Far more dangerous than people actually gave it credit for.
You have limitations with actors as opposed, and with the medium of film. I mean, not to bash on film, but
no.
In a book, you can basically write about anything, and your brain can make an image of it. But it's not easy to do that when you do it to a movie, because you have to have these special effects, and depending on what the effect you're trying to make is, it has to be really good.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I said you could take it. You could take out like an entire chapter about how Harry Potter was sitting on the shitter and reading the Daily Prophet.
I think it's called the Loo, actually.
Whatever. Again, you can have that in your movie, fine, but it most likely it's going to be so insignificant that you're just going to delete it anyway. So, the other thing, though, about movies is that nothing can really measure up to a book. It's all interpretation. Like, for instance, there's a movie out there by Andy Warhol. I can't remember the name of it, but you wouldn't expect it the first time watching it, but it's actually an adaptation of A Clockwork Orange.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a film adaptation of that.
There are two.
Well, I didn't realize there was one by Andy Warhol.
Okay. Yeah, basically, it's a single camera, it never moves, but it's basically an interpretation of how it would be shown on stage, kind of. And it's Andy Warhol, so it's a little out there. But it captures one of the biggest points of film. You have to take a little to give everything. And really, I think that should be my closing statement on the matter.
Okay.
Anything you want to add?
My favorite Harry Potter book, just in case any of you want to know, probably none of you do, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Go for it.
My favorite Harry Potter book was The Half-Blood Prince.
Half-Blood Prince?
Yes. Just because I liked the way, and this will sound kind of ironic coming from me because of what I've been saying this whole time, but I liked how Dumbledore became,
He became a martyr.
Yeah. He became a martyr, and I liked that. And I don't know. I like the character of Slughorn, and I like the whole espionage thing between Harry and Draco. I just thought it was really cool. But anyway.
Oh yeah, I think they're well written, but again, there are a lot of insignificant details. Details that, in order to make a more coherent story, would have easily been taken out.
Right. And these are just our opinions, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's not like we're condemning J.K. Rowling. We love her. Hail J.K. Rowling.
You're the man. But
I think she's the woman. Actually, although the reason she's called J.K. Rowling is because she wanted to be portrayed as a man because, no one would buy a woman's book. But anyway.
Right, it's a publisher thing.
Right.
But yeah, in the end, we don't hate Harry Potter. We think it's a fantastic story, something to be celebrated. But at the same time, there are flaws.
You can critique something you love.
Absolutely. Never said you couldn't.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing here, folks.
Yep. So, from all of us here at Radioactive Walrus Entertainment, I'm Jonathan Knoll.
I'm Dustin Wimberly.
And you know what? enjoy your movie, enjoy your book. We don't care.
WalrusCast is hosted by Jonathan Knoll. Our title music is Cephalopod Walrus Mix by Kevin McLeod and mixed by Jonathan Knoll. You have listened to a production of Radioactive Walrus Entertainment.
WalrusCast.